You look at all of the polls that are breaking, and again, we heard 6 months ago it's going to be a massive red tsunami. Then we heard Democrats were going to hold their own. Then over the past couple of weeks, we heard it's going to be a massive red tsunami. I think that's where most people are. There have been some polls that have come out, though, over the last 24 to 48 hours that are quite instructive. I'm surprised, again, by Biden's approval rating. Some polls will have him in the low 40s. He's got a lot of 45, 46s. Very interesting. But we have some really tight polls. Look at this Arizona poll, by the way. This is the Arizona Senate race that tightens ahead of Election Day. This is, of course, good news for Blake Masters, a Republican. But we have a dead heat here. For some reason, Mark Kelly cannot win easily, and that's within the margin of error. So Kelly has blown a pretty big lead there. But then you look for Arizona governor, and everybody has basically already anointed Kari Lake the governor. I've seen a couple of polls now that show that this race is still close, despite the fact that Katie Hobbs has been hiding for the past 6 months and refuses to debate Kari Lake and refuses to do what candidates need to do to actually win elections. That's still tight. We can go to Wisconsin, and in this Fox poll, it certainly looks like we have a virtual tie in Wisconsin's Senate race. This is a race that we heard was over a couple of weeks ago. We've seen polls that still show this pretty close. Johnson up by 3 points, 48 to 45%, also within the margin of error. The governor's race also extraordinarily tight there. You go to the Pennsylvania races, a Freudian slip. I always say Pensacola, a Freudian slip. But you go to the Pennsylvania races, the governor's race isn't close.
No.
And we heard that Oz was on his way to victory, and everybody said, and yet you have Fetterman stubbornly ahead in a lot of polls, 3, 4, 5 points. I'm just going to say at this point, Republicans should be winning in a massive way. Go back to what Mitch McConnell said 6 months ago. The races would be over, but for the poor quality of the candidates on the Republican side, I don't think anybody has any idea how the Senate's going to go.
No. So first, briefly on Pennsylvania, it's asking a lot for Oz to outrun Mastriano, the Republican gubernatorial candidate, is well down in the polls to Shapiro. Oz has a lot of ground to make up, and in fact, he's targeting in some of his ads voters who are likely going to vote for Shapiro, trying to thread a needle there without alienating Mastriano and therefore Trump. But writ large, all the polls in virtually every race are close. We have seen a tightening in Arizona. We have certainly seen New Hampshire's gotten tight, and some Democrats nervous there because they put some money behind to support the MAGA candidacy of the Republican Bullock, the Senate candidate there. And now there's some regret, like, well, should we not have done that? I'm thinking being he'd have been easier to beat. But writ large, a senior Democrat told me the other day that they believe Republicans wished Election Day was a week ago.
Right.
Because Republicans had seemingly peaked. They were that, yes, historical trends all year long would have said Republican landslide. We saw that Democrats have a strong summer based off of the president's legislative accomplishments as well as the Dobbs decision. This final act seems like it's about the economy and crime. Advantage Republicans. But they've seen the polls settle a little bit in the last week or 10 days, that the Republicans looked like they were about to really storm here to the finish line. And instead, Democrats have caught them a little bit. And now everything seems to be within the margin of error again.
So, Willie, if you look at the economy, which is just getting worse by the day for working class and middle class Americans, you look at the growing concern about crime. I don't know how this is close, but I do know if you look at the polls, it's close. Again, in all these states that were supposed to be over, Pennsylvania was breaking Oz's way. There's no way Fetterman could win. Nevada gone for the Democrats as well. Now you have people inside the Republican Party going, we're not so sure anymore. We're not so, things are tight everywhere. Georgia, Arizona, New Hampshire, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Every race seems to be within the margin of error.
In some of those places, Democrats are shocked, like New Hampshire, that the race is as close as it is. But it is. That Senate race up there has gotten very close. But it is the economy at the end of the day. Part of the reason I was talking to Congresswoman Slotkin about the issue of abortion, she was with us on set a few months ago, and she said this has completely reshaped the race. She'd opened up a double-digit lead. it's come back now. It's closed a little bit. And I think if, we were talking off the air, you talk to other Democratic campaign people, they say that's still important to a lot of our base, but it's not the #1 issue when we're talking to independents. It is, at the end of the day, about the economy, which Republicans successfully, in many cases, have pinned to President Biden and to Democrats.
And Rev, I saw an article talking about how you did a Get Out the Vote rally in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. The question is, are people of color going to be motivated to get out? You have said for a very long time that black voters, black Democrats, not as motivated as you would like to see them. How about in the final stretch?
I think that they are starting to show more motivation, big turnout in Georgia. But in other parts, we have not seen the same energy. And I think a lot of it's going to be down the final stretch. You have to talk to people about what they're concerned about. I keep telling people, you have to turn people on to turn them out. Don't be afraid to talk about crime. Be afraid not to talk about crime. And at the same time, talk about police reform. And at the same time, talk about what the Supreme Court may do on affirmative action. Talk to people about what concerns them. But don't tell grandma or her granddaughter that I don't care that you might have a criminal act on your block or you may get thrown in front of a subway. What I care about is my highfalutin thesis that I'm submitting to my college professor, because she's not going to come out and vote.
That's the issue about protecting democracy, which is a real issue. But for people, who are worried about what's happening right in their lives, some other story.